So evil is not necessarily right or wrong. Evil is a mathematical error. And I was like, that doesn't sound right, because we have good intentions. They say the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and God is like, well, let me show you. You are, in fact, looking for this thing that doesn't exist. I completed it all. It's done. But you won't let go of it. And the more I looked at it, sure enough, that's exactly what we're doing. We're all convinced that this non-existence thing exists. This has been one of the toughest videos that I've ever had to make. The truth about evil. Proof of God. I've thought so many hours. I've been trying to make this video for about a year now. It's a complex issue. If it weren't complex, then people wouldn't be discussing it for centuries. But I don't want to be one of those videos that beats around the bush and makes 20 minutes before they finally make their point. The point is, to get right down to it, the truth is that evil never really existed. It doesn't exist. It's not real. I know it's counterintuitive to everything that we've learned, and especially with the way that we look in the world. We see people that do very terrible things. We see war, we see starving children, rape, fire, famine. A bunch of stuff that feels like it's evil. But the truth is, that's because we're looking at it from a point of right and wrong. Evil is not right and wrong. No, to summarize, evil is more like the knowledge of good and evil. Good is complete. Evil is incomplete. That's the best way to describe it. How do I know that? How am I making this video? Well, the truth is, a couple years ago, I almost killed myself. And when I say almost, I mean I had a date on the calendar where I was going to do it. Why on the calendar? Well, because I'm meticulous and I was planning everything out. And truth is, the only reason I didn't do it was because of my son. The lowest of low in my life, where everything was painful, and I'd say stuff like, I hate people, I hate humanity, I hate this earth, I hate this whole damn thing. I would say stuff like that, and I meant it. But my son, I had a lot of debt, and I knew that if I killed myself, well, there are two reasons. I can only imagine what it would have been like for my son to hear the news. Hey, your dad offed himself. It was something that it's very painful. But when you're in pain, you just want out of the pain. But that's not even the reason why I didn't do it. I didn't do it because of my debt. It's kind of weird, but the credit cards that I owed money on in the terms and conditions said that if for some reason that I was ineligible or unable to pay, that they would go after next of kin, and that debt would have been left to my son. So I ended up taking a day job to pay down the credit card debt. And I said, you know what, as soon as I pay off that debt, I'm going to kill myself. Kind of weird, right? Being in so much depression and anxiety that you can live through the pain but still plan and looking for that sweet release, putting that on the calendar. I'm going to do it. Why? Well, the answer's not simple. You might be asking, what could have possibly been so bad? Where you felt like you had to end it all. I've heard so many people just not understand it, not be able to wrap their head around it. And now that I don't feel that way anymore, and everything's good, I found spiritual enlightenment, and I I have a newfound glory for life. It's difficult to explain the mentality, but basically, if you wake up every single day in pain, and you can't control your own thoughts, and you can't control other people, and you can't control things, and bad things just continuously happen, and you feel alone on an island, you just want a reprieve. You just want an exodus. You just want it to end. You just want it to stop. But since I had to keep going with the day job, I started taking psychedelics. There's kind of a long story on that. First, it was meditation, a lot of meditation. I made YouTube videos for meditation. Started even doing self-help courses, and I made videos on the law of attraction and stuff like that. And a lot of it helped, but it didn't fix the problem. There was still a problem inside of me that was evil. And I didn't understand what evil is. In fact, nobody does. Nobody gets what evil is. And once I took psychedelics, it's like the world opened up, the universe opened up, and God revealed himself to me. I know that's kind of dramatic. And again, like I said, it's taken me about a year to make this video. January 15th was my first psychedelic experience. January 15th, 2021. Today is March 31st, 2022. Like I said, it took a long time for me to get here. Because you don't want to go around telling everybody that you talk to God, number one. Point number two is that you really don't want to put that responsibility on your shoulders, on your own shoulders, because it's kind of counterintuitive to the lessons learned. So the best that I could do is describe it the way it was described to me, because the whole point of understanding evil is understanding that everybody views the world differently. And everyone is responsible for having their own revelation on how things are. You see, there's only one purpose of this reality, of this creation, of this existence. One main purpose. There's a whole bunch of sub-purposes connected into it. But there's one ultimate goal of existence, and that is consciousness. Sentient beings is what we are. We are sentient beings created by the ultimate sentient being. And it sounds like a genie in the cloud granting wishes to a lot of people that don't believe in God, myself included. When I was doubting God, I was like, I believe in science. I believe in pragmatic logic and mathematics and data. I don't believe in all of this. So when God showed himself and explained himself, he's like, what do you think I am? I'm all of the energy, all of the mathematics. Look what energy is, it's mathematics. And he shows me. And I'll make separate videos on my actual psychedelic experiences, because they were, those by themselves I can write an entire book on. But this video is one purpose, and that's evil. Because evil is the only problem. And God showed me why it was a problem. The way that it was explained to me was like, if you wanted to create intelligence, sentient beings in a simulation, how would you do it? And that's where we hit a roadblock is in humanity. With all of our technology, we can't do better than artificial intelligence. Because no matter what we do, it's just obeying the program. It's just doing what it's written. It's just doing what it's programmed to do. It doesn't think for itself. It can't think independent of the programmer. Any artificial intelligence that we write. We can even randomize its choices. These AI, we can randomize the choices, but even randomization, it's still an algorithm that the programmer has to program. Everything is programmed. There's no way to get it to be its own being, its own intelligence. That's just technology that we don't have, and we can't seem to figure it out. Well, God, being the infinite knowledge and wisdom, figured it out. And it's kind of funny, but it's simple. It's really simple. You present a choice, And the programs have to make a choice on their own. They cannot make a choice with the programmer making the choice for them, deciding for them. So you introduce a tree, an option, and you say, here's a tree, you can eat from this one, the tree of life, which is mentioned in every religion, by the way. Every major religion has a story of Adam and Eve, and every religion mentions the tree of life first. Or you can eat from the tree of knowledge, this one, the tree of good and evil, the knowledge of good and evil. Why is it so important that it was separate? Well, see, the thing is because this sentient choice is not programmed by God. This one choice, everything else has to be programmed, right? They can run, jump, laugh, sing, play. God has to write that. If you think of it like a video game, like the character has all these abilities, can swing a sword, cast magic spells, shoot a gun, all these video games. The programmer has to write it. The user gets to choose what to do, but everything technically has to be written. But there was one thing that was not written: the choice. See, Adam and Eve had to choose to accept the system, the tree of life, or choose to reject the system, the tree of knowledge. And the rest is history. Obviously, they chose to reject the system. Now, mathematically, because in my psychedelic state, God was showing me the actual code. I was seeing the information, and I couldn't understand. I'm like, how are they rejecting it? This was like a question that I was rejecting. I was like, it doesn't make any sense. It was so uncomfortable. And I was like, because you still had to write them rejecting it. Like all these dumb decisions that they're making, you still have to write those capabilities. And he's like, did I? Did I write that? I couldn't understand it. I couldn't understand it. It was so bizarre. And then it hit me like a ton of bricks. Was that they were looking for nothing. They weren't writing their own code. They were looking for nothing. And God was like, exactly. And since they're writing their own code, which is errored, it's incomplete, it's nothing, they're buggy. And what happens to buggy systems? Well, they're going to crash the system. And God's like, they're not going to crash my system. They're going to crash their own. That's why death had to happen. Death is a reboot. Death isn't what you think it is. It's not an end. It's you went too buggy and you had to shut down, reboot. Just moves your consciousness from one point to the other. Other religions call this reincarnation, karma, so many different words for it. But it's a reboot. That's a reboot because you guys are a program with mathematical information. So every single time you reject the system and you're trying to write your own rules, and you're trying to write your own program, you get buggy because you don't know what you're doing. So evil is not necessarily right or wrong. Evil is looking to fix something that doesn't need to be fixed. Evil is a mathematical error. And I was like, that doesn't sound right because we have good intentions. They say the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And God is like, well, let me show you. You are, in fact, looking for this thing that doesn't exist. I completed it all. It's done. But you won't let go of it. And the more I looked at it, sure enough, that's exactly what we're doing. We're all convinced that this non-existence thing exists, which is paradoxical. What? Yeah, we think that. Non-existence. Before existence, there was non-existence, right? That only makes sense. No, that doesn't make sense. How can non-existence exist? And we put it into our mathematics. We put it to our children. We say, here's one cupcake. If you eat that cupcake, how many cupcakes do you have left? We tell our children this. Oh, well, you have 0 cupcakes. No, that is wrong. It's a mathematical error. You don't have 0 cupcakes. How can you have 0 cupcakes? You can't. It's impossible. You can have -1 cupcakes. You can't erase the cupcake from existence. We have had no evidence of non-existence, but we still try to put it everywhere. And what's even further fascinating from all of this is we put it into our philosophy, we put it into the way that we try to fix problems, and it just makes it worse. Like if you think about the philosophy of the glass, the infamous glass being half empty or half full, you've already errored the question. Empty doesn't exist. Empty is a concept of nothing. It's a concept of zero. You can't have empty. The glass is always full. It might be half liquid, half air, but it's always full. See, that mathematical error that Adam and Eve ate from the tree, they thought they were breaking a rule, but there wasn't actually a rule. It was advice. It's like, don't stick this fork in the electrical outlet. It's going to be very painful. Just don't do it. It's not a rule. Don't go stick your hand in fire. It's not a rule. Just don't do it. It's advice. See, because the tree of knowledge means that we had to figure it out for ourselves. And since we don't know what we're doing, we're connecting ends to things through trial and error that we don't understand. And we're creating problems. The error code mathematically, I call it the error code. The error code mathematically is tied into that. It's tied into the glass being half empty, half full. You've created the error and you try to explain the error with the error. You have this vortex of paradox. It's a paradoxical dilemma that destroys things. It's evil. Because there is no empty, but you're creating empty to define empty. It's like saying, we've never had any evidence of zero. We have zero evidence of zero, therefore zero is true. You've just wasted time on an equation that's irrelevant. You're trying to prove the error with the error. So we have this zero inside our hearts. Adam and Eve. Lack, loss, zero, nothingness. Oh my gosh, I'm empty inside. How are you empty inside? That doesn't make any sense. It's a mathematical error because we're programmed. So like I said, once you start to understand the error, you start to see how you're applying it in every aspect of your life. At least I did. And let me tell you something. It's terrifying when you realize that every problem that you have is caused by you. It's not a good feeling. Now I know what you're saying. You're like, okay, that's pretty good. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, but that doesn't prove God. That just proves that we teach our children wrong mathematically. I'm going to disagree. Because the more you think about it, the more you acknowledge your error. You acknowledge the error in how you think. You acknowledge your cognitive biases, your cognitive dissonance. You can actually objectively observe yourself, which is weird because you're observing yourself with your own consciousness, which is subjective. So you can't subjectively observe your own objective. That's why people can't observe themselves. You can observe other people, they're the object, but you can't observe yourself. But when you recognize the error, you can actually look at it and be like, oh, that's where I messed up. And once you start to do that, you start to see the truth. The truth of mathematics. You start to see the error, how people could not let it go. The most brilliant minds in the world. Albert Einstein, the Erwin Schrödingers, everyone. You start to notice that they really hold on to these concepts like forever and never. Think about that for a second. We've never had any evidence that this thing called forever exists, but we put it in our math. We teach our kids. We use words like with pi, because it's 3.141 infinitely forever. It goes on. It's never ending. We use words like that, never and ending. We've never had any evidence of never. We've never had any evidence of zero. We've never had any evidence of forever, but yet we still use it like it's fact. Why? See, because the truth is that there is not a forever. There is a complete informational source. When you think two-dimensionally, through numbers, you have a beginning and an end. But when you start to expand into the greater dimensions, you start to see that everything repeats itself, even pi, and even phi, the golden ratio. Everything repeats itself. So all of these mathematical structures can create one giant structure that begins exactly where it begins, and it ends exactly where it ends, at the same point. Begins where it ends, and all of a sudden you have exactly what they describe to be God. The Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. God is the structure of all information. It doesn't go on forever. It's one structure. It's entire structure of information, positives and negatives. And it just repeats itself because it's one structure. It is. It's not tied up in time. It's information. It's pure information, pure data, pure energy. One complete structure. Why is that important? Well, because it makes sense to this reality. Because there's no zero in this reality. That means that there's no gaps. It's like a program. You can't have gaps in your code because the code will crash the system. So God would not create the entire creation with gaps. It's got to be complete, whole. The knowledge of good and evil. Good is complete. Evil is incomplete.